All right. It is your old pal coming to you here with one fast Eddie Fear on Live Before Lock. We, of course, are brought to you by Thrive. We'll be talking about them a little later, but in the meantime, it's the reunion tour, Eddie. The reunion tour. Back where it began. This is our third site doing a show together with. We've probably done like close to 200 shows, I would guess.
Yeah, I was gonna say we did roughly 6 days a week for a long time, and we're really banging them out in high quantity. So yeah, it has been too long, my friend. I apologize that staffing issues and other things have forced you back on the air with me. I know you've been trying to avoid this for a long time. I'm sorry. I promise to not make that much fun of your ridiculous laugh or your pedophile grin.
Oh, jeez. Come on. Fortunately, my wife says she likes my laugh. So
it's I'll never forget it. I occasionally catch clips of you and whatever you're talking about, there's just occasionally this, like, I'm worried you're suffering an arrest of some sort where you're just like, I was building my lineup for the quarters last night. Oh my God. And it happened. And this guy came out and I can't believe it. And it's just like, okay, you max excited.
Yeah, I'm trying to get a little better with that, but that's always part of the
your genuine enthusiasm is amazing. Like I am apparently a cynical old bastard because whenever I see you on, I can't help but smile. It's infectious.
Yes, and of course you've got to meet me in person several times. I'm pretty much the same in person as I am on air.
No, you're not putting on a show. I am much less of a conceited douche in real life. I play that up on air, but you're pretty much the same jolly old soul was he in real life.
All right. Okay. Well, we've got an 11 gamer here. So would you like to just kind of hit game by game for the time being, just hitting some highlights, and then we should have a good 30 minutes for questions. We can hit various news and notes as we go through those. Would you prefer position? We haven't been on such a giant slate before in quite some time.
Yeah. I mean, you and I were doing this back, 3-4 years ago, where every Wednesday was like this. Like literally every Wednesday was 11, 12, 14, 13, and then Tuesday and Thursday were 3 every week. Eventually they got someone who knows how to schedule a little better in the NBA office. But a few years ago, this was par for the course. I do find this sort of a unique game theory opportunity, which unfortunately isn't that relevant anymore, but it really should affect your roster construction decisions because the odds on some number of people not just absolutely destroying their price makes really changes the way you build your lineup. I was discussing the Bucks with someone a little while ago, and someone was like, I really like Malcolm Brogdon. And I said, I think Malcolm Brogdon might be my favorite point per dollar play on the Bucks, and he's my 5th favorite Buck in tournaments. He just doesn't, there's no chance of him giving me 9x or whatever you want to call it. It just does not ever happen, ever. So yeah, I think he's really probably going to give you 28, 31, 34 for his 5,400, which feels fine. But if you're playing tournaments, you need to give yourself a chance to win the whole thing. And Brogdon isn't part of that plan. So, I do think it's really interesting to end up in a situation like this one.
Yeah, it's going to be a bit of a mess here. Looking at the news, someone just texted me and said that Bledsoe is out.
Is he? That's exciting.
Yeah.
That's
so
news.
I'm calling up. I was trying to reboot everything here because since Eddie and I hadn't done a show yet, I was trying.
George Hill Day. Let's go, George.
George Hill against the Wizards. Feeling good about this one.
Let's go, George. Let's go, Chris. Let's go, Giannis. I guess let's go, Brogdon. That's pretty hilarious that came up at exactly that time. But now there's, a touch more upside generated. But there you go. That's nice. That's some news. It's a nice matchup. Bledsoe hadn't had a bad game, and he's had one bad game in 3 weeks, so I guess he deserves a day off.
Yeah, and he's been dealing with the sore Achilles, so kind of.
They're starting Tony Snell. Is Point Brogdon.
Yep. So here we go. It's Brogdon, Snell, Middleton, Giannis, and Brook Lopez starting on Saturday. So there we are. Let's start. Let's just kind of hit with that one since that is one of our 7 o'clock games here, Eddie. We do have the Washington Wizards hosting the Milwaukee Bucks. Of course, in the last time these two teams faced off, they did not have Giannis Antetokounmpo for the Bucks, and Tomas Satoransky ripped off his first career triple-double. That was a fun one to watch here, but we've got the Milwaukee news hits us first here. So as I work to re-up the projections and a few other things, we will talk about those and ownerships as they come along. I've pulled them all into my spreadsheets, but I am not as deft as Josh, and we should have an update shortly. So I will let you take her away here. Go ahead and start off with the Bucks, because setting you up, we have Giannis Antetokounmpo coming in at a solid discount to one James Harden, who will be without the services of Chris Paul, which makes everything interesting tonight. There's all sorts of value with 22 teams in action. We're going to have a ton there with Dallas. We're going to have more with the Spurs, with the Pelicans against the Spurs. And then we've got a couple people here and there on various teams. And Landry Schmidt starting, and he's super cheap on a lot of the sites.
And Mike Muscala.
And Muscala and TJ McConnell. So this is stars and scrubs. Knock yourself out. Go to town.
Starting?
Pardon? No, McConnell's not starting, but he will move into a more prominent role.
Muscala is starting.
Yep.
Is what I was saying. Yeah.
Yes. All right. So
TJ McConnell's an interesting one, just because they've been going to him a lot less recently. He was sort of one of my favorite GPP guys for a couple months earlier this year, because with or without the injuries, they were constantly giving him 25, 29 minutes. He was still hanging out, in the $3,000 or $4,000 salary. And he is a high variance guy just due to how much he can pick up from steals. He's an elite steals guy. He can get you 5 steals in 26 minutes. So he was really fun in GPPs for a while. And still today I have some interest there, but they've really dialed back. They've gotten much more deep at that bench, giving time to Shamet and Furkan and Bolden, and Muscala is getting the start and Shamet starting over him. So I still don't think you get more than, say, 26 minutes. I am redoing my rankings as we speak. I've almost submitted them twice, and I'm redoing them for Milwaukee now. So I will bang those in the next 10 minutes or so. Whenever EMAC talks for a second, I'll just swap out those 2 teams that I was redoing. Sorry, I just kept redoing them and never hit submit because I kept fixing them. But they are coming shortly. So yeah. So Bledsoe being out makes me like Giannis quite a bit more. I already had Giannis about 5 or 6 points ahead of LeBron. So that was an interesting question for me on FanDuel, where they're appropriately disparately priced between the two. But on DK, I was pretty consistently going to Giannis, Yahoo Giannis, with that really, really crazy tag. Which is interesting when you get those super expensive guys, because it's like a functional $14,000 relevant salary, but salary just doesn't work the same way because there's basically $2,000 value guys. So life is very interesting on Yahoo. So there's a strong reason to play him and a strong reason not to over there. But now much less of, none of Bledsoe calling his own number, Brogdon calling his own number happens. He has a decent drive game. But it's a lot less, and you just should have the ball in Giannis's hands a lot more. I'm not surprised if this pretends a closer game, which already was only, I think, a 5-6 point line, should draw that closer by a point. And, Giannis versus the Wizards, already am projected for a little north of 60. He's exceeded that several times in a row against this team. And now, yeah, I'm pretty happy about that. Relevant to James Harden, I'm still not going to go there today. And it's not because I don't think he can get the upside, although the matchup has a lot to do with it. If he's playing a different team, I'd be more inclined. But I would probably not play James Harden today because on a slate this massive, he needs to absolutely be the top scoring guy of the day, which I think is like a 30% chance or something to fit into your ideal lineup. And by some significant amount to be good. And there are just simply many players who cost 8,000, 8,500 who I think can get me 50 or 60. So for me to build an ideal lineup with James Harden in it, I really need James Harden to get me 80 until I'm feeling terribly good about it. I don't know which, definitely, of the 8K guys is going to put up the massive numbers, but there's enough of them that 4 of them will. There's going to be like 4 guys who cost 8,400 or less on DraftKings, we'll say, who put up at least 50 fantasy points. And so for that lineup construction to end up inferior to the one that has James Harden has to put up a really, really stupid number. Could it happen here? Sure. This is the 4th game this year between the Rockets and the Jazz. And it's just been all over the place for Harden. The first game was, I think, either during the Chris Paul suspension or whatever, but the first time they played, There was no Chris Paul, and Harden scored 45 in a really low-scoring game. I think it was 100-89. The second game, they were both there and in, and Harden had his worst game of the year where he played like 28 minutes and had like 25 fantasy points, just complete and total dog shit. And the third game, they were both there, and in 40 minutes, James Harden had like 72. So with Chris Paul there. So, there's 72 with Chris Paul. There's 44 without Chris Paul one time, I think it was. Game log watching aside, there is obviously the chance that James Harden can get out there and play his 40 minutes and throw up 80-something fantasy points. But because I consider that not that likely, and because even that doesn't necessarily kill you if you're getting 55 to 60 out of Luka Doncic or Rudy Gobert or D'Angelo Russell or Giannis or Karl Anthony Towns or Vooch, or there's just a lot of guys who are cheaper who I think can throw up really, really big numbers. So disinclined towards certainly Harden, and for that reason was originally disinclined towards Giannis. But at this point, I'll bump the minutes projection by a little. So now maybe 36, 37. The usage should go up a little bit. The game's a little more likely to stay close. And it's one of the best splits you could have for him going against the Wizards. So bringing it all back around, I now have a fair amount of appeal for all four guys who are starting next to him on the Bucks in tournaments. I don't mind George Hill, although I still think he ends up somewhere around 27 minutes. And again, we said we need super upside day. So can you get, 40 out of Malik Beasley? Sure, we just saw that. Can you get 40 out of, a lot of these other guys we're talking about? Sure. Can you get 40 out of George Hill? It's going to happen. Maybe it's against the Wizards, but it seems a little unlikely. So I'm disinclined towards George Hill, who is not Tony Snell levels of lack of proficiency and production, but still not a guy who I like to necessarily ring shit up with. Still plenty of guys left on this team playing with some really good. So, and Sterling Brown just got checked in, which actually ends up being relevant for his minutes. And again, if he'd gotten the start, I'd have had some interest. Without him getting the start, I'll probably stay away from Hill as well. But now Brogdon's minutes pick up where I think he's, possibly going to get into the mid-30s at 5,400. That makes a fair amount of sense. DK only, really, I think. I think he's 62 on FanDuel. That's a bit too much for me. Middleton now carries a perfectly sufficient ceiling. I think you can certainly get there at like 6,400 or wherever he landed. Brolo takes a few extra shots between the block upside he possesses that really comes into play in this matchup against a Washington team that will let you block it. All of those guys make a fair amount of sense for me, but probably in order of preference would be Giannis, Middleton, Brogdon, Lopez.
Just for numbers on George Hill, do you think he'll get in the 20 to 23 range?
For fantasy points? Yeah, that's almost perfect. I would say something like in the spot, which is a good spot with slightly, it's not even like an increased usage spot. He now, he's still coming off the bench. So his role isn't necessarily going to change squat. So it's still a nice matchup. But this is one of those rare times at that super cheap price where a decent guy who can make threes, which would be really nice in this matchup with Giannis driving, and those could get opened. He's a guy who's led the league in three percentage a couple times for significant portions of the year, but still coming off the bench. It would not change a ton for me. So I'd probably move his projection up 2 minutes and his fantasy points up to like 23. But
okay,
finding cash. I'm trying to think of other super cheap guys on DK in that price range who I might still like a little better, but finding cash friendly.
All right, moving over to the Wizards side, we do have Bradley Beal. He's been somewhat disappointing considering how many minutes and the other opportunities afforded him without John Wall in the picture. We've got Tomas Satoransky, price coming up. Of course, we did see a nice matchup in the last one. That was his first career triple-double. I don't know that he'll be getting another one tonight by any stretch of the imagination. But
he just missed one. He's one of those guys I've only liked like 3 days this year, and he's been good all 3 days. And the last time was against the Spurs, and he had like 21, 9, and 8 or something. So he got very close to following it up, and I do think it certainly could happen again. And this is definitely a fine spot for it.
Oh yeah, he's my new Kelly Oubre. Eddie, sure. I have to have my favorite Wizard while I'm watching the game, so he's been there for a while, and now I can like Kelly Oubre from afar because he gets way more garbage time and chances to go DGAF. We'll talk about that in a moment. But Satoransky will be in some of my plans here. I'm running about 100 lineups tonight since I am on air, so he'll probably be in about 10% of them. I'm not going to get too crazy with that. But are there any Wizards that are sort of standing out for you? Let me see. I don't know that we have an update yet. There we go. Otto game time decision. So we shall see. He's been dealing with a sore toe. I don't want to play him. I preferred him coming off the bench with the second unit because they definitely needed his potential to be the glue guy and do anything for them. He reminds me of a modern version of Derek McKee. You need scoring tonight? I can do that. You want me to play defense? I got that. You need some deep range shooting? I got that one too. I knew you'd get Derek McKee. Most of our fans watching
I do. I love those references that you make for me and solely for me. So yeah, Wizards. I think Beal will go under-owned on DK at 8,500. I like him much less raw points than Devin Booker and D'Angelo Russell and Luka Doncic. But if he's 4%, he did randomly bang out a 55 against this team earlier this year. Yet another guy, by the way, in the eights who would not shock me to see 55 out of tonight, which means I need 80 out of James Harden for $4,000 more. But I like some exposure to Brad Beal in tournaments. It's just obviously a guy who carries all that ceiling. Porter on DK, if you got news he was going to play, you could do. Thomas Bryant in tournaments if you had exactly that much left. I think I would now prefer over the random Lakers guys, but he'd be center 18 or something. Like he'd be way down there. Satoransky on DK at 5,600. Again, a spot he's shown some success in before. Bledsoe being out does help your defense significantly. It's not a perfectly adequate defender, so is Brogdon, but Bledsoe is actually pretty superlative. So, but certainly nothing I'm sticking on. So to rank them for order, I'd like to play them in a GPP. I imagine it would be Beal, Satoransky, Porter on DK, where you can obviously swap off in the event he isn't able and stuff. Not much else of interest for you there. I wouldn't lose my shit over Brian or Jeff Green, but not guys I'm targeting.
All right, let's get to the other starting game, 7 o'clock game. 216 over under. The Charlotte Hornets at home, favored by 7. We've got Chicago coming into town here. We know that Jabari Parker is away from the team for personal reasons. And the rest of this game, in my opinion, is just kind of meh at best because there are so many other spots that are a little more clear-cut. No real pertinent injury news or notes here other than Zach LaVine will be in. He has been falling over there on draft because he had the Q tag next to his name for most of the day. It's 7,200, sure, but I think I'd be a little more picky. Maybe 5,700 for Bobby Portis. I don't hate Marvin Williams, who's crept into a few lineups of mine. Do you like anything from this game?
There are a couple guys I think are tolerable to play. So the quick 30-second version is all Dunn, Levine, and Markkanen are in play in tournaments for me as guys who can hit 40, 45, 50 in reasonable spots. Though the most likely conclusion is that they tend to all have themselves in that 35 range. But it would be site dependent. I really don't want Dunn anywhere except for maybe Yahoo, where I think he's 21. I think you can fire that up in a tournament. Zach LaVine. Again, the other two are site dependent. Raw points, my favorite would be Lauri Markkanen. So on DraftKings, where there's a full differential of, I think, $400 between the cheapest of those, which is Dunn, and the most expensive, which is Markkanen. If you want to play a bull, I'd play Lauri Markkanen because you were game stacking or trying to run it back with a Kemba share or something. I would go Markkanen there. On FanDuel, where it's a little more disparate, I'd run either Levine or Dunn. On Yahoo, Markkanen's really the most expensive. So again, my favorite there is probably $24 Levine. I think it is 21 for Dunn. But certainly no one to love there. Portis always in play in tournaments for me. And this is a good spot against a Charlotte team that really can't guard anyone at the center regardless. And then for Charlotte, Kemba's struggles are well documented. Biyombo, I wouldn't expect to see significant minutes again. He's been under 20 minutes. Four of his last 6 games, the 2 games he was over 20 minutes, were against Memphis. I would guess that comes back down again. I think they prefer to run, him starting and getting his 18, getting 15 out of Willie, and then, running MKG at the center for a while or Marvin at the center for a while and the various other things they do. So Kemba, I would have less than all those shooting guards I have named. But that being said, This is a team that is bad enough that can give it up through the point enough that you can get that number out of Kemba again, and he'll be 2% owned. And so for that reason, I'm just fine with Kemba. After that, you tell me I have to play a guy in tournaments. It's probably Nicholas Batum, but I'm not feeling wonderful about it.
All right, let's get on to a game with a little more excitement here. We have Brooklyn and Orlando. This one is in Orlando. Orlando's favored by a bucket. They have a 220.5 over under. The two key pieces for me, and we have a loaded center position, as we are going to allude to many times tonight, but Nikolai Vucevic has been in this matchup twice in the last 2.5 weeks. He has dropped 50 fantasy points both times against Brooklyn. We do like that matchup. And then on the other side, we have one D'Angelo Russell, who has dropped 50 points in both of the matchups himself. No longer has Spencer Dinwiddie to contend with. He didn't have Dinwiddie for a while. We have a little bit of Shabazz Napier coming in at a discount in real NBA dollars to one Spencer Dinwiddie. What do you like here amongst these marquee guys, and then any value, considering we know we have several other spots where we're going to go to for some supreme value?
Yeah, again, if you're playing in tournaments, there's cash value in lots of places, but for tournament value, you need to demand guys with upside, and depending on your site, the Denver guards are going to be incredibly chalky, and they should be for obvious reasons. Although, back to back, they have a lot of minutes. We'll get there. What do we have for ownership right now in, say, DraftKings for D'Angelo Russell? Because he's probably, I'm a big fan of his at this point. But again, as you mentioned, he had
9% for Russell. Yeah,
I love that. I don't mind it as a Luka pivot right now in the DK GPP lineup. I've built he's next to Luka, but I imagine we'll have Luka at 24. It's an 11-game slate, so it can't be too high. But I imagine Luka's at a much more significant number. And as you've alluded to, this is a great spot for D-Russ. You mentioned he had over 50 both those games. I think he had like 55 both those games. Like, he put up a really big number in each of those matchups against the Magic. That doesn't mean a whole hell of a lot. He's had that upside the whole time, but the matchup is conducive and should show you he can get there. But the biggest reason I'm excited is the price on DK is still kind of tolerable at 8,200. And more importantly, the most significant path to failure for him was Spencer Dinwiddie is having a good game, and Kenny, for some reason, thinks that means he shouldn't play D-Russ, which is always really stupid because that would just open up more shit for whoever. But anyway, just his odds of abject failure went way, 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 way down. And still the ceiling is there. So, yeah, I like D'Angelo Russell quite a bit. And if that ownership is going to be, 10%, give or take a couple percent, he would be one of my stronger plays on the day. Raw points, I still have him like 7 points behind Luka, who I just really hard to imagine how the guy fails here. But clearly at that ownership. It is worth pointing out, the more massive a slate gets, the less relevant ownership is. As I've stated a few times, ownership is sort of an inversely correlative quality in that you want to it's how many people you're passing, not how many people have the guy. So when you're talking about a guy who's 60% owned versus a guy who's 30% owned, well, when your guy does better, you advance on 70% of the field as opposed to 40% of the field. That's massive. If Luka's 20% and D'Angelo is 10%, that's nice. You want the 10%, but that means that, you're advancing on 90% of the field instead of 80% of the field, which is not nearly as significant. So it's better to look at it sort of 1 over X. But either way, yeah. So that's where I would come down. On that, on the Nets, they're a goddamn mess. People are coming back and healthy. You can RHJ in a tournament. You can do other things, but just about anything else on Brooklyn is getting a little too cute for me.
All right, our next one here is Miami. They are hosting the Pacers. Another one not that exciting. Lowest over-under of the night at 203.5. We have Miami favored by a bucket. We have Tyler Johnson in the starting lineup. He's 4,300 on DraftKings. Kind of in a spot there where he can be at a different position, but a pivot away from Powell and Miller and a couple other guys that are right there in that 42, 43, 4,400 range on DraftKings. Do you like him for starters? Because outside of him, there's Hassan Whiteside at 6,600 in a tournament going against the Pacers. Feels great until you're actually watching him play and sitting on the bench and sulking. But at this point, Tyler Johnson about the only guy I'm really excited about in this one. Tyreke Evans back with the team. Will be playing. Corey Joseph was dinged up. He is going to play tonight as well. So that means outside of Victor Oladipo, the Pacers are at full strength.
Hassan Whiteside would be my favorite player in the tournament in this game. He beats the shit out of Miles Turner and has been doing so for several years in the East. I have him projected for 24 minutes and 41 fantasy points. There is a ceiling beyond that. And that for me is, again, in tournaments, my 11th favorite center, and in cash, probably my 34th or something. Like, I don't want to play Hassan Whiteside. But if you made me play a player from this game, you said, okay, you have to build a, if I was, I know there's some guy who plays this really stupid, I have to play Fred VanVleet. I don't know. There's some guy out there who does this thing where he has to play a bad player. And if someone came to me and said, you have to play a player in this game in a tournament, I'd probably punt. Actually, I'm lying. I would play James Johnson or Tyler Johnson, probably, because I would want to spend less money on my shitty play. But, again, center is wicked deep, but it's 66 on FanDuel. I have no interest. It's 66 on DK, and I think it's 24 on Yahoo, which is closer to 5.5 in equivalency. Yeah, okay. I can see running Hassan Whiteside out there. He should be and has almost always. I only have my notes. I don't have like logs up in front of me, but I will quickly pull up some Whiteside versus Miles Turner numbers. But I have it as something I generally want to target, with the obvious caveats that he may play 19 minutes, and he's not going to play more than like 27, almost certainly. So if you look at their games over just the last 3 years, there were 2 this year. They were both in November. Whiteside played 33 minutes and had 45 fantasy points, 29 minutes and had 37 fantasy points. Those are both fine, probably not nearly good enough for tonight. The only bad game was last year, 22 minutes, 27 fantasy points. That was the worst. And then other than that was 34 minutes, 55, 37 minutes, 47, 34 minutes, 57, 41 minutes, 56. You're not getting those 35, 41 minutes, so that's not going to happen. But, I think he very possibly gets you over 40 for his 6,600. So I would have some interest on that. But, yeah, this game is absurd shit with everybody playing, and we've spent too long on it already.
All right, then let's get to a good one here. Dallas and Cleveland. Good one to watch. Your mileage may vary. Good one for fantasy purposes because of salaries being so cheap. Absolutely. As you've mentioned, we have Luka Doncic out there. As far as ownership, we got an update about a half hour ago, so there'll be another one since we've had a couple pieces of news coming in. But on DraftKings, the most popular player is Malik Beasley at 26, and then there's Butler and Mikal Bridges at 20%. Doncic is the fifth most impressive at 17%. So, yeah, I think Daddy Likey probably double that.
I want to triple that, I think.
Triple
I
that?
think I've gone somewhere up to half. Like, I don't know, maybe Harrison Barnes takes over, but there's just he's going to be on the court with a lot of guys who just don't like to, like, maybe they still start Dorian Finney-Smith at the 2 and start Doncic down at the 4 and let Jalen Brunson, Johnson, that's an interesting portmanteau I've created there. Jalen Brunson start at the nominal point guard again, but he's going to get whatever he wants against a Cleveland team that is so bad defensively. I don't have the stats up in front of me, but just by almost any defensive metric, they're the absolute stains. They're dreadful. They have no one to stop him. And just, again, I can't overstate I'm spending all my time next to Jalen Brunson and Dorian Finney-Smith and Salah Mejri and even Maxi Kleber and Dwight Powell. None of these guys are guys who are really looking to put up shots. Harrison Barnes, in theory, will take anything you give him, but just doesn't have the talent to get as many as Luka. He should get whatever he wants. And he's just too cheap on DK. He's too cheap on FanDuel, too, but he's way too cheap on DraftKings. Yahoo, he's actually, like, appropriately priced. Yahoo, he's priced, like, the same as, like, Steph and Durant. That's about what it should be. He should be at around 10K in this matchup. So, yeah, he's just too good. So I'd be way on top of 17%.
All right. Our wizard behind the scenes, that would be Tom Kennedy, just messaged me and said, hey, Emac, we do have an update. Came out 54 seconds ago, Eddie. So we have Doncic up to 25% now on DraftKings. On FanDuel, he is 16%.
Yeah, I was going to say 18, probably somewhere in there. So, yeah, okay. So I'll only have twice as much, not triple. but
still feels good, though.
It still feels very good. There's no, I mean, he's had 60 repeatedly recently in much harder matchups and is one of many reasons. And again, you're talking about FanDuel. You want to play James Harden? He's $4,500 more than Luka Doncic. Is that what I'm getting? And I have him projected for 11 fantasy points less. Like, okay, like it can get there, and we'll never know. It's a 1-game sample. You never know the answer to these things, but generally disinclined towards paying up for James Harden. It was hard to convince me to play, an underpriced Giannis Antetokounmpo, which I've now sort of fallen ass backwards into because of Bledsoe being out and everything that means. But yeah,
All right, we have Harden at DraftKings at 13%, and we have him at 11% on FanDuel.
That sounds right.
Just perspective there.
Yeah, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with playing James Harden because he's a guy who can just bust the slate. I'm never going to disagree with you playing a guy in a tournament at any price who could be the highest scoring guy in the slate. And if you ask me to pick the highest scoring guy in the slate, I will pick James Harden. I think it is the most likely percentage that he is the guy who puts up that number. That being said, I think the odds that he's the highest scoring player on the slate are around 20 to 25%. And when he's not, you have to ask yourself, well, my lineup would have been better with anyone else who was that second place guy.
All right, we've got, let's see, let's hit a couple other Dallas guys here. We've got Harrison Barnes, of course, playing a prominent role. Dwight Powell should get a ton of minutes. He will be going against Ante Zizic, which is a good matchup for him. And then you've got Maxi Kleber at 4,100. And then you also mentioned Jalen Brunson. Kind of rank those guys for us, and then we can talk about Cleveland players.
It ends up being site dependent because of positional scarcity and because of salary both being different. So it ends up actually really being different. Like on Yahoo, for example, Dwight Powell is the better play on a couple other sites. On FanDuel, he's clearly superlative, the best play where you can drop him, and he's a power forward. On Yahoo, he's center only, and there's infinite good value, making him less value relatively, and takes up one of your basically 2 center spots where there's 11 underpriced centers. So he's like my 5th favorite guy in the Mavs on that team. So it ends up being relevant. But what I would expect to happen for this team is I do think Powell will start at center if they haven't said so. And I think they keep Kleber in there too. I think that they start Luka Doncic at basically point guard, although they probably start him next to Brunson. I think they put Dorian Finney-Smith back on the bench, and you get Doncic, Brunson, Barnes, Kleber, Powell as the starting team. So, and all those players are good to great for me. Again, this matchup is terrible. I like having more than one Mav in a lot of lineups, or at least one, certainly, which is saying quite a bit when you're talking about 22 teams in play. But FanDuel, especially Harrison Barnes, makes a lot of sense. Much cheaper. He's 55 on FanDuel, 58 on DK. So normally that would be like 63 on FanDuel. So he's just too cheap. He's still, even as the number 2 player, is still going to get proportionally much more usage than he has been getting for a while. And the matchup is still outstanding. So by all means, no reason to get away from him because Luka is back. Again, especially FanDuel. Brunson, I really don't want on DK. Again, we discussed you need to have super upside. You're not going to do much better than the matchup with the Cavs, but Brunson is a very low upside guy. And the few times he's had any sort of, even like 30+ number, he shoots like 8 out of 10 from the field. And that's a little unlikely to continue here. So he's an excellent cash punt. I'd confirm that he's starting first because there's a chance he gets reduced down to mid-20s in minutes, but I don't think that's likely. I think it's most likely they keep him starting. I don't want a Dorian Finney-Smith on a slate this big. There's no reason to do that. Kleber's just fine. Mejri in the event he starts, but again, needing a super ceiling. Matchup's great. Don't think you need to go back to Devin Harris today. So again, where ends up being a big factor here, but I'm going to have very little objection to any amount of Powell or Kleber or Barnes or Doncic. Brunson situationally, probably no reason to DFS in DFS tonight.
All right, let's look at Cleveland. We do have Larry Nance 5,700. I talked to Adam a little bit about this one on the earlier show. He thinks that production that he had in the last game could be somewhat of a mirage here. Might be. I think more his phrase. I'm paraphrasing to make it quick, but I think he was saying, it's kind of getting a little bit cute considering there are 22 teams in action. We do have Jordan Clarkson, who should see solid minutes. He is at 5,100, and then you've got Alec Burks at 5,200. I believe a guy I know used to always say, they don't really make my socks roll up and down. What do you think about this?
Like, I love that you remember my old. Like, that's a saying you should be using, because that is some.
Old school.
That is some old school shit right there.
It is the bee's knees, Eddie.
Yeah, there's obviously some appeal for running it back when we have a lot of exposure to the Mavericks. My favorite guy on this team in tournaments would probably be Rodney Hood on DraftKings or Yahoo. Yahoo is still the minimum. He's going to play 30 minutes. $10 playing 30 minutes against the Mavs feels pretty good. So there, I legitimately, I don't know if I can go as far as to say I like that, but I don't hate that, which is about as good as I'm going to say about any of the Cavs here. I have Nance right now for 21 minutes. Maybe he gets like 24. He's going to have to absolutely demolish the crap out of that. Not for me where he's priced in the mid fives. It's still too much. If he's like 4,500 as you know, a super productive backup center, I can see getting into it. But like 5,700 for Nance is just too much for me. Does he have 25 minutes, 40 fantasy points in the tank? It's there, but it's just a big ass slate. So, you know, and I have that conversation with people a lot too. They're like, why don't you like Larry Nance? You talk about tournament upside. He's a guy who can put up a huge upside. I'm like, he can, but there's also like percentage chance, right? So if you're just talking about guys in that price range, what are the odds they smash their price on his own team? It's less likely than, say, Rodney Hood, right? You're talking about 40 out of Nance or 30 out of Hood to be good enough to win a tournament tonight, right? What percentage of games is Hood going to get there? So it's a bigger number than the percentage of games that Nance would get to that target number. So probably Hood for me, then Clarkson is most likely to spike a big number, then Zizic, then Burks, then Nance due to minutes considerations. You could like cash punt Sexton, just a guy who doesn't carry a lot of upside because for a point guard, he gets staggeringly few assists, doesn't really get steals and blocks, but $4,300 is obviously wicked cheap. So really don't want to do it in tournaments for the aforementioned upside reasons, but cash, okay, you can play Team Sexton.
All right, let's maneuver on here to the 8:30 games.
And Nwaba is playing.
Yes,
so
sorry.
If you needed other reasons to be not that excited about your Cavaliers, there is yet another reason to not be excited. The Heat are starting who we thought they would be starting, Johnson and Johnson. So,
all right, we've got there's no turbo slate for these 8:30 games, Eddie. Very sad, DK. Very sad.
I feel
missed an opportunity there, but they do have some showdown slates. Let's talk Los Angeles and the Golden State Warriors. That game, of course, will be the marquee matchup tonight on ABC for Saturday night basketball. This is a good one. LeBron came back 40 minutes, got into overtime, was phenomenal. I've mentioned it a couple times today. The only thing he didn't do, Eddie, he didn't make all his threes. I mean, he was 1 of 6. Come on. What are you going to do there, LeBron?
That is not good shooting.
What are you going to do? But
analysis.
I think that was the tune-up game for this one. He's coming in, guns blazing. I love this spot for LeBron. Huge slate, though. What are we going to do with this information here?
What are we going to do? Yeah, for the Lakers, it's really hard to like anybody outside LeBron for obvious. Like, if you know how DFS works, players' salaries are apportioned based on their previous production, and all these guys have 3 weeks of previous production without LeBron, and now LeBron's there, so they're all more expensive than they should be. So, Bron, yeah, FanDuel especially, where you're getting a significant discount over Giannis. I'm basically, at this point with the Bledsoe out news, I will still prefer Giannis, but if that money doesn't happen to be available, or if you are, God forbid, playing more than one lineup, yeah, no issue with you playing any amount of LeBron James. Beyond that on this team, you could talk me into Zubac in a tournament where I think he has the upside to smash his price, and that'd be the next thing I'm looking at, and it's, I think, more likely than Ingram busting out 40 or Kuzma busting out 40 something. Kuzma at 6,000 on FanDuel is like that would have been way too cheap a few days ago. You know, Rondo, I don't think there's the need. KCP at 4,000 on FanDuel, I guess. But yeah, I'm pretty content on the Lakers with LeBronathan there. Looking at the Warriors, you know, Clay has a rumbly in his tumbly, so we don't know if he's necessarily going to suit up today. My favorite guy on this team, regardless of the presence of Clay, but even more so should Clay be out, would be Steph Curry, which is where Josh and I landed on our last show. And dear God, did that work out extremely well. But still well too cheap on FanDuel, or 9,500 is especially discounted at that price. So I would probably rank my interest in them in tournaments as Steph, Draymond, Durant, Cousins. Cousins just... don't get me wrong, the guy's absolutely amazing, but he's sharing the court with, 2, 3, 4 all-stars at all times. So I guess 2, 3 all-stars at all times, and is going to play 25 minutes and just has to absolutely demolish the living piss out of the price. So if he has a tremendous game and puts up, 1.8 fantasy points a minute. That point is pretty good, but still just at whatever he is. DK is still 6,700. You could talk me into it, but I just not on a slate this size. I would look other places. I don't mind Iguodala on DK where the price isn't ridiculous. It's pretty ridiculous on FanDuel. I'm not going to play Alfonso McKinney for the aforementioned reasons. If Clay is out, you can cash punt him. You can FanDuel him, I suppose, because there is a non-0% chance of huge weight game. But yeah, playing next to the most beating players in the world makes it less likely you put up a big upside.
All right, yeah, that's Adam and I sort of landed on this one against as being one to watch. That we'd have a lot more fun watching it than trying to play many people. But
yeah, it's a tremendous game. I can't wait to watch the basketball game.
Yeah,
I'm really excited to do that. It's not the most conducive fantasy environment. There's literally a guy on the Lakers I like, and you can play Kevon Looney, in tournaments, especially on DK, where he's still minimum price. He still, is going to get 20, 25 minutes off the bench. He can randomly spike a big game with steals and blocks, but no one there I'm really super targeting interested in.
All right. If you want to upload your rankings, people are asking about that. I will talk for a moment.
I will fire them off again.
All right. So I just dropped in Slack or in the YouTube the Thrive deposit link. What you do is you go to bit.ly/Osmo to download the app from Thrive Fantasy Sports. If you put in $10 on your first deposit, they'll give you 10. If you put in 100, they'll give you another 20. You put in 200 or more, they'll give you another 50. That is cash available for immediate play. That is a one-time offer. Your first initial deposit, go in on that link. Thrive is a game based on player props. Essentially, you get 20 player props. They'll do it for football. They'll do it for basketball. Can't wait for them to do it for baseball. That'll be fun. But what you do is you choose 10 of those props. It's an either or. Is something going to happen or not going to happen? The more likely it is to happen, the less points you get. The less likely it is to happen, the more points you get. Hey, just like a player prop bet. So definitely give them a look and enjoy that deposit bonus. Act fast. The other thing I wanted to point out is for those of you playing the Super Bowl, we have all sorts of content. We are doing ownership projections. That's premium. That's behind the paywall. We are doing Alex, you know him as Osmo, Alex Baker's rankings for each of the players in that game. That is behind the paywall. If you use the promo code Live Before Lock, pick the monthly package of your choice. Include Fantasy Cruncher if you would like. Use the promo code Live Before Lock, all one word, at checkout, and you will receive 50% off your first month. For those of you still doing a little freeloading, you get the article from me on the homepage breaking down both teams by position as well as ranking all the players in the game. But I definitely am looking forward to using our projections and the ownership projections for this single game slate. There's also an article breaking down from Nolan Kelly how to approach various single game contests. He takes a look at one Chipotle addict and says, hey, here's what he did in the conference championships. Can we infer anything from that?
Did you call him a dick?
I did call him a dict. You're right. You're right. Okay. As you're putting those up, had one other person just say, hey, what are we doing with Andre Iguodala? I'm fine with him sliding in. I looked at that a little bit more. Where his price point is, he makes for a nice pivot away from someone a little more expensive on DraftKings, but a nice pivot away from someone like Landry Shamet, who's getting the start. We know that he's going to play. He's going to be tasked with attempting to slow down LeBron James for probably about 30 minutes in this game. That gives him time to do some things and some stuff on the court. So if we get lucky and he gets a few backdoor layups, we're going to be happy with his production. And I don't think he'll kill us. But remember, happy birthday to an Andre Iguodala who turned 35 last week.
Yeah, he's a baby in my world, but yeah, he's a baby. Uploading now. Sorry about that, everybody. I gave myself 4 hours today, and apparently that was about 20 minutes too short to watch everything I needed to do and get these uploaded on time. So first time I've been late in like a month and a half. I was doing much better at it, but I don't want them to be bad. And the bigger the slate, the greater the chance that I'm like, oh, I've got them. Shit, something changed. Oh, I've got them. Shit, something changed. And so that keeps happening. But we're good now. They're going up.
All right. By the way, the Motor City Madman approves of us. He says, our old pal, Fast Eddie Fear, back together. Glad to find this duo again. Thank you, Ted Nugent. Thank you, Ted. Ted Nugent 81. It may not be the Ted Nugent, but it could be a Ted Nugent.
If it is the Ted Nugent, you, sir, are an asshole.
There we go. Yeah.
Yeah, no.
Hey, come on, Triangle Hold. What's wrong with that song in today's day and age?
Yeah, that one is culturally sensitive and gentle. I don't know.
It's out there.
Rankings are up, kids.
All right, back to the fun at hand. We've got 5 games left here. We have an important one here. Yes. The New Orleans Pelicans going to the San Antonio Spurs. Amazingly, a 229 over under. Wow! I say wow because the Spurs are involved, and the New Orleans Pelicans are without Eton Moore, Randall, Elf Payton, Anthony Davis, and Nikolai Mirotic.
All true.
Goodness gracious. We do have DeMar DeRozan back for the Spurs. Let's start off here with the Pellies. How are you going to approach this? We have Jrue Holiday, who makes for the logical pivot away from Luka Doncic. Or shall we try to play both of them, Eddie?
Otto Porter will play and start. That the playing is obviously good for him. The starting is worse for him and everyone else. It removes Jordan McRae as any sort of really reasonable punt. Not that he really was anyway, but it was fun to dream for a minute there. Chip off Beal. Not enough so that I'm super worried about it. But anyhow, Porter playing and starting.
Just while we're on there, do you see him getting more than 30 fantasy points today, Porter?
No, I would not be shocked to see that, but my projection would be just a hair under it. I think I'd have him at about 28.5. I haven't rerun it, and it's really probably not worth doing it at this point.
Yeah, no, but I'm just saying he's kind of out of contention on this deep slate.
Yeah, I would have him as I'd sit there for a while wondering whether or not to play him or Ariza or Bryant. I'd probably rather play Jeff Green for the price advantage, just because I need people to savage their prices. With everybody healthy there, I don't think I get the 45 out of Otto Porter that I necessarily need. But Ariza could do it with steals. Thomas Bryant only costs $5K, and there's been games where he really gets his shit going, and they leave him out there for a while, and you can see the matchup being good for him. But Beal, yes. Satoransky, sure. After that,
Yeah, and same thing with Jeff Green. Even he's a fun player to have in your team. He's a hustle guy. He doesn't mind playing, the center when he has to, and he can in this particular matchup. Yeah, he's. I think he was a Hoya, so he's kind of from the area. So yeah, but there's 8 other guys I'd rather play than him at this point. Now back to our good stuff.
Yes, sir.
Jrue Holiday.
Yes, sir.
Luka Doncic. Shall we put those hands together, as Joey would say on Friends?
That's
Joey Lawrence.
Oh, sorry, I went Blossom on you there. A little fun for you there. I can't believe you picked up my "whoa" reference, but we'll get back to that at some other time. I like Jrue Holiday. Great. He, for me, projects in every way as a slightly worse Luka Doncic because of price, because I think slightly less chance of achieving upside, slightly lower upside, slightly less safe in cash, significantly worse matchup. But he's great. If it was not for the existence of Luka Doncic, I think I'd have a slight preference for him. Again, site and price dependent, over playing, say, D'Angelo Russell. This also the swan song of the 4 matchups between these two teams. Jrue Holiday's played the Spurs 3 times this year. He's done it with only Elf and everyone else hurt. He's done it with everyone in. He's done it with half the guys in. And in those 3 games, his fantasy points were 45, 45, and 45, give or take like a point. I project him for a little more than that today. I have him for 48. Now, I have Luka for 54. So, price included. And again, if Luka is that cheap, clearly it is still Luka for me by a reasonably significant amount. But Jrue getting 60 here does not shock me whatsoever. Can do it with the defensive stats, just taking over a bigger role on his side of the ball. But that's I have him probably after Beal. So 4th of my 8-point X shooting guards. But I'm certainly not going to have any objection with somebody playing Jrue Holiday today.
All right, the remainder of the Pellies, this is going to be one of our sources here for some value. We have hinted at it, but people that are in play would be Kenrich Williams, Darius Miller, who not only is taking double-digit shots per game, He's taking damn near double-digit three-point attempts per game. We like that from a fantasy perspective. I think I'm okay on this particular slate passing on Frank Jackson or Frazier. How deep are you going to go on this roster here?
Yes, how deep is your love? Yeah, it is hard not to like. Darius Miller is not the type of player in which normally, as a guy who at least has a reputation of being primarily a jump shooter, that I would want to target for. I need super upside just because, okay, I'm playing the Spurs and I need to get 30 real points to get there. But that hasn't proven to be the case. If you look at his recent string, again, don't have it up in front of me, but he's got like 2, 3, 4, 5 assists. There's like a 6 rebound and a 7 rebound game in there. He had multiple steals each of the last couple games and has like a 35 and a 38 fantasy point game or something out of the last 4. Now, I don't like playing Darius Miller today for and it's also another favor in a sense. He hasn't shot well. He's shooting like 40% from the field. He shot like 30-something or 40% from the field over all these games where he's been somewhat productive. That being said, the combination of the popularity, the matchup being difficult, the fact that I do think with the exception of somewhat poor shooting, he's playing over his head. Like, I don't think I want to go back there again at what ends up being a pretty significant ownership. I can't, I would not differ with anyone having Darius Miller in their lineup. He was playing uber minutes, 3 of those 4 games, like somewhere between 36 and 40. So I am more inclined to run with the Denver guys or other guys with the chance of getting that upside. And I do think these are generally scores over his head. But again, as everyone has noticed, this team is incredibly injured. I would rather play Kenrich Williams. We were a day ahead of that one on Wednesday or Thursday or whatever. He had played the one game on the front end of the back-to-back and played out like 31 minutes and played all of overtime. And everyone else was like, I think I'll play 25 minutes. I think I'll play 27 minutes the next day, which was a huge upgrade over the 8 he had been playing. And I went out and said, this guy's one of my favorite tournament plays. I think he plays well north of 30 minutes. He played 38 minutes. And again, it's just some basic coach psychology. They're getting rid of Anthony Davis. The whole team is injured. They're not going to make the playoffs. And if they do, they will get their shit pushed in by the Warriors in about a second and a half. So, yeah, let's let this kid who's out there and playing well play all the minutes he can get. So I still think you get 36-plus minutes out of Kenrich Williams today. Would be slightly more inclined to get there with a guy who I think can also do the scoring, a little more likely to pull down some rebounds. So I would rather go with Kenrich Williams due to Darius Miller, but largely just a personal preference and would be largely affected by the ownership. But I imagine we have Darius higher by quite a bit. And for that reason, and I have Kenrich actually projected for 1 more fantasy point. So I'd like Kenny Hustle between those guys.
All right. One of the guys I was looking to pivot away from Miller with, and we'll get to him, but just quickly now, Bridges for Phoenix. That's where I ended up going, just to get some differentiation in that.
Yeah. Again, we sort of got his upside game of the week. Again, it's been a silly week. We've had multiple $100,000, $200,000 winners this week, and we're talking about all kinds of players who helped us get there, and that was one of them. I did it on Wednesday or whatever day where a lot of people were playing Rondé Hollis-Jefferson, who I just shit all over on that day and ended up being not terrible. But my theory was he'd gotten 29 minutes the night before and everyone was like, oh, it's so exciting. I'm like, on the back-to-back, this is not going to happen. And he got 21 and played really well and got 25 fantasy points. But I listed players I would rather play than him. And of those 3 players, one of them was McCall Bridges, who had close to his best game of the year. Just going to play infinite minutes and obviously a tremendous matchup. So not really super usage guy, not a guy who we, associate with putting up big fantasy scores when we're talking about McCall Bridges. But the matchup is good enough. I'm willing to go there against the Hawks with him. So yeah, I would significantly rather play McCall Bridges than probably either Kenrich Williams or Darius Miller, but it would be close with Kenny. But definitely over Darius, I would rather play McCall Bridges. So yeah, I agree with your call significant. And actually they're both in. I've now given you half of the DK lineup because I've still got it up in front of me, and that's 4 of them. So
let me guess, is Embiid and Harden in that one? Are you going a little crazy on that?
No, neither.
Okay.
I already told you about D'Angelo and Luka were in there. And
okay.
I talked about me loving all my 8K guys. So
gotcha.
Nope, rather than 12, 10, 10, 4, 4, 4, 4, 4, this lineup is actually 4 guys start with 8, 4 guys start with 4 for their salaries. So there you go. Imagine you can build it from that. But I like that construction more, not massively so. If I was building 10 lineups, I'd have 7 like this and 3 that were more stars and studsy. But I'm a little more of a fan of playing all these 8K guys who I think have pretty easy 55-point upside than playing the 10 and 11K guys who are. I'd probably, given the time and in the midst of the show, I'm not going to do it. I would probably change this around and find a way into Giannis because that DK price is pretty sexy. Depends what the ownership comes in at, but I doubt it gets much over like 25% on a slate this sexy. So if I had time, I imagine that Giannis would appear here, in fairness.
All right, looking at the other side of this game, the Spurs have got LaMarcus Aldridge as one of my favorite players. Kind of tails off from that point there. I think DeMar DeRozan is fine. I think that Derek White up a little bit, but he has been relatively solid lately. Even though DeRozan's back, that may take a shot or two away from him. I'm still okay if he lands in your lineup. But for me, on the other side here, it's really just LMA.
Yeah, obviously price dependent with 98 on FanDuel or whatever it is, and 81 on DK. 81, again, may or not be one of the guys in this lineup. Probably the one I would be most inclined to take out of, though. You're now putting back in DeRozan. Gay is in there and healthy. My odds of getting the 55 I want out of Aldridge here are smaller. Certainly not zero. It's the Pelicans. You love the matchup, so probably for that, and what I presume is the highest ownership of we have them higher owned than we have them pretty high owned, right? I'm just gonna load the ownership as opposed to asking you every 10 seconds, but
so he is 16 on DraftKings, which is a little lower than I thought, and then on FanDuel he was one of the highest.
Two.
Or sorry, he was low on FanDuel.
One of the highest is 98.
No, I'm typing and trying to look. He's 7 on FanDuel. At one point today, he was the highest on DraftKings at 21 this morning. Things have shaken out since then.
We have McCall Bridges now at 21 on. We have McCall Bridges higher than Kenrich Williams and higher than Darius Miller.
I think. So okay, our ownership projections are pretty damn good. I think they're taking into account sharper players are going to be on Bridges. I think a lot of the masses are still going to go back to Miller. So. I was a little saddened that he popped up because he wasn't there when I was making my lineups. But I think the higher in buy-ins you go up the chain, Eddie, I think you're going to see more Bridges.
Okay, I think that's a correct estimation. I love that we still have DeMarcus Cousins as like the 13th highest player. Like he was good the day he came back because the price was just still way too low. On a slate like today, you need 40. It's a really good matchup. Maybe you get there, but like I don't know. Just
all right. We got anything else from New Orleans and the
let's see. I would play Tim Frazier over Frank Jackson for just a slightly better chance of upside. Tim Frazier is just an elite assist guy, so if I'm needing to pull an absolutely stupid number out of those guys, I would be more inclined to let Timmy do it for me than to go the other way. I would not entirely expurgate Rudy Gay from my player pool. Prices come up a bit on FanDuel where he was pretty sexy, and Harrison Barnes exists now, and it's kind of hard to get there at 6,300. DK at 58 again, not ideal, but in 150 lineups, I'd have a couple shares of Rudy Gay, and I'd have a couple shares of DeMar DeRozan as well. Like he's 7,600, that is too cheap. If he's going to hang out around 7,600, he is going to drop 50 at some point in the near future. This is just a fairly poor matchup for him. Drew Holiday is going to spend a lot of time on him. That's never good for anyone. So it's not the best spot for him, but I'm going to want a lot of DeMar DeRozan over the coming weeks, I have a feeling. But today it would be small amounts just because the matchup is that bad. And again, with hands on deck, other guys I like Davis Bertans and Derek White, I don't think would quite make it.
4 games left. We got 30 minutes, but we want to leave some time for questions. Denver, Minnesota. Denver on a back-to-back. They were at home. Now they are up in warm and toasty Minnesota, being facetious there. But we have Karl Anthony Towns at a bit of a discount here to Nikola Jokic on DraftKings, putting them both in the conversation for who we want to play. But as Eddie mentioned, it's kind of tough getting up there with the 5-figure players, even with all of the salary. Well, not tough, but you're going to have a very similar lineup construction to a lot of people. So food for thought on that one. We know that Murray and Gary Harris are both out. Monte Morris has been phenomenal. He will be drawing the start. Again, Malik Beasley coming off a career-high 36 points last night. Last night was James Harden got to 30 NBA points continuing his streak there. But for the first time in 24 games, or ending after 24 games, he was not the leading scorer in the game, as both Beasley and Jokic topped him. Jokic had 31. We've hit on Harden a ton, but here are two other guys we could pivot to if you don't want to go the Doncic route. Cat, Jokic, take it away, Eddie.
Yeah, so Harden, by the way, being in to try to get his record and continue that it was really frustrating at the end of the game. He played 37 minutes and he was in with 90 seconds left and down 18, chucking threes to get himself up to 30. That's bad coaching on the front end of a back-to-back. Like, I get wanting the guy to get his records, but okay, it has to end at some point. There's no reason to be stupid about it. Yeah, again, I don't think there is. I slightly prefer the 8s and 4s to the 10s, the 11s, the 12s, and like one less guy who can really put up a massive number for you. But both Towns and Jokic are priced extremely well. They've actually played each other a very significant number of times, and they're two of my favorite players. So I've literally watched every second they've played on the court against each other at least twice. It is a fairly neutral matchup for both of them. But again, they are priced very advantageously, and Jokic's chance of getting to stupid ceiling is greatly increased when you take Jamal Murray out of there. And there's just a better chance of him running more of the offense, basically from the high post or from the center position. Now, yesterday we saw, again, the M's, the guys filling in, have both absolutely massive games. And again, it ends up being site dependent, but they're obviously tremendous plays again today where they're anywhere in the 4s, 4,400, 4,700. Now, they'll be fairly popular, but again, not so much on a slate this huge. And, they are traveling across the country on a back-to-back. It's freaking cold. They played 37 and 41 minutes, I want to say, last night. So don't go nuts with your expectations with these guys, I guess would be my point. But they still are objectively too cheap. I do think they both start. I think I project them both for 35 minutes. That still feels pretty good. I slightly prefer Jokic to Towns because Rose is going to play. That tilts it enough for me. I have no issue with you playing any amount of $9,700 Karl Anthony Towns. Really hard to imagine he doesn't get you the 40, 45, 50 to not be embarrassing. And there is a big ceiling beyond that just with the current construction of this team. And again, just usage floating around a la Luka Doncic with, you have Taj out there who's not doing a butt ton. You have a Kogi out there who's not doing a butt ton. With all that usage to spare, just, the ceiling is very obviously in play. In cash, for example, though, I would play Vooch. Like, I think Vooch is a more solid play than Karl Anthony Towns. A little more likely Towns, fails. If one of them had to, I think it's less likely that Vooch fails to get 40 than Towns, for example, for what it's worth. But I would be more inclined to play Jokic at his price. I'm trying to think beyond that. If they were the exact same price, I would still slightly rather play today Monty Morris to Malik Beasley. Yesterday for me, it was more of a Beasley day, just because I knew he was in roughly as good of a spot, and we said so on the show. But it was going to be about his fifth of owned because both he and Monty Morris end up being roughly similar fantasy quantities, and this thing happens over and over again where one of them goes off, and then you should start playing the other one for a quarter of the ownership relative. That being said, deep in tournaments, I don't mind doing Will Barton because he does actually have the upside. He's been kind of dreadful recently, and there's no reason to think that he's advantaged by having starting Monty Morris and offense more through Jokic, and they've moved away from Point Barton as a thing, but still just a guy who can get it done, and there's just a chance it goes that kind of squirrely tonight with the minutes on those other guys. And I still like Paul Millsap in tournaments. 5,200, 5,400, I think it is. He's a guy who just a few times this year randomly bangs out 45 where he picks up X steals and blocks, and you can certainly do that, guarded by Taj in this situation. So a lot of affection, frankly, for a lot of the Nuggets in a pretty good spot. A little more tepid on the Timberwolves. I'm a believer in the Nuggets, when they're not fatushed, getting out there and putting up a hell of a score, but Rose coming back halves things a little bit. It is normally one of the shittiest splits matchups for Wiggins in the league, before, after Covington, no matter what was going on there. But still makes an interesting pivot off of Towns and something you could do, but not a ton of appeal for me. And of course, Jared Bayless, Again, I'm wanting to spike super upside. This doesn't seem like the best spot for that. So site dependent, I could see it on DK, but not a ton of affection for Bayless. Rose coming back really makes that sort of dicey.
Indeed. Indeed, that kind of mucks it up. Questions are queuing up. We'll hit on those shortly. Gamers, moving on to the next game. You hit on Harden pretty well, so I don't think we need to belabor that point. Fareed, Price is getting up there. This is a tougher matchup. A lot of big bodies on the court. Rudy Gobert got there a little bit into the fourth quarter for us. It took him some time, took Rubio some time, but they both had fine matchups last night. Those would be the two I'm looking to in addition to Harden in this game. I do have a skosh of Jay Crowder as well. I like him for the 3-and-D aspect. There's enough shooters that they're going to need him to guard, and methinks that one Derek Favors not going to be fleet of foot to get out there chasing the ball around the perimeter. What do you like from this game here?
Yeah, love Gobert. Just love Gobert. Didn't get tasked with too many minutes last night. I think he ended with 30 or 31 or something. Again, they're the only team who plays yesterday. There are 6 teams that played yesterday and today. It's the Hawks, the Hornets, the Nuggets, the Rockets, the Heat, and the Jazz. The Clippers are on a back-to-back today and tomorrow with the weirdest scheduling thing ever. They play at 5 today and 3 tomorrow. It's one of the worst scheduling things I've ever seen in my life for the Clippers. They're not on any of the main slates, so it doesn't really matter, but figured I'd throw that out there. But yeah, love Gobert. Rubio would be my next favorite guy. Crowder would be my next favorite guy, especially FanDuel, 4,400. Even down in the droppable range there. Donovan Mitchell is my 7th favorite shooting guard whose price starts with an 8, I think. Like it is doable, but with Rubio back getting his full minutes, it's really making it less likely that you get the absurdo game out of Donovan Mitchell in this spot. So I do think that's it on the Jazz. I'd have 2 shares of Derek Favors and 150 because I do like for the same reason I like Gobert. He's going to spend less time at the center, but the center spot is pretty sexy in this matchup.
Yeah.
Fareed 8,000 on FanDuel, no thank you. 6,700 on DK. I still think that's fine. The matchup is shit, but playable. Good to still be done. Eric Gordon can be done at 2%. I'll take a stab at Eric Gordon, but you really don't want to against the Jazz. And Harden I spoke about for a half hour. I don't think you have any reason to Tucker or Austin Rivers, I guess, is interesting. I think Austin Rivers is 38 on FanDuel, and with Chris Paul out again, is going to play a butt ton of minutes.
And he will stat hunt like a son of a bitch. Did you see him get that last bucket at the end of the game?
Yep. And I will, so I would have 2 shares of Austin Rivers in 150 lineups on FanDuel only, but not a lot to love in this game.
All right. Last 2 here. We've got Atlanta and Phoenix. This one, surprisingly, a little better than I think, or getting lost in the shuffle, I think is the better term. 235 over under. Phoenix favored by a triple. DeAndre Ayton will be back. That kind of puts the kibosh there on Rashawn Holmes. We've mentioned Mikal Bridges at various points here. We have Devin Booker at 8,800. That's pretty solid. Ayton, I'm okay with 6,800. I'm assuming they're not going to bring him back if he's not healthy because they're fine piling up losses in the loss column. That kind of curtails Josh Jackson a teeny bit, Kelly Oubre a teeny bit, but at 5,900, 5,600, they're just fine in that 3-game 9 o'clock late slate. With regards to Atlanta, too many people healthy. The only people I'm really looking for is towards the late slate. I would consider Collins in a phenomenal matchup, but I want him to play 32 minutes. I don't know if we're going to get that. And then I think Kevin Huerter is not horrible. What do you have from this game up and down both sides? We have 21 minutes left and one last game, so we're on pace, Eddie. We're doing well.
We're doing okay. Trae Young obviously played 37 minutes, I think was the number last night. Again, them on a back-to-back, but that I can see rolling that out in tournaments. Again, that price has come up. It's priced better on FanDuel, but they're stuck with his superfluity of turnovers, which can really hurt his number and no bonuses and stuff. So either place he's in play in tournaments. I can see crazier things than playing $4,000 DeAndre Bembry on FanDuel. But $7,100 John Collins on FanDuel, I actually really like. I do think there's real 30 and 14 potential for him in this spot. He only played whatever it was. I want to say 27 last night, which I'm glad about for these purposes because it'll keep his ownership down. But he was in significant foul trouble. The game before that was a blowout. I think in a close game he plays 31, 32 minutes. 7,100 on FanDuel is way too cheap. DK 7,900. Okay, that's tougher. But I really like the spot. I like John Collins quite a bit, especially at what we expect to be limited ownership, especially on FanDuel. And I don't hate Dwayne Dedman either. Just at price in what is just about best possible matchup. He can give you 40. He's not in my first lineup. He's not my second. He's not my third, but I'd have shares of him. I'll leave it at that. Don't think I'm going anywhere else there. Obviously, adding Bazemore back into the lineup has made things, really sticky and shits all over the place. More interest, obviously, in Phoenix. McCall Bridges is a just great matchup. I'm going to play 40 minutes and way too the hell cheap play. We've been through that quite a bit. Devin Booker is going to play 40 minutes if this game is close, and not on a back-to-back or anything. I really like Devin Booker's ability to put up just a massive, massive number here. I haven't projected less than Luka, and he costs more than Luka on DK. He's cheaper than Luka on FanDuel. They're not that far from each other. Still prefer Luka, but I like Devin Booker a lot in this spot, as certainly you should. And then having Ayton back, I like Ayton on FanDuel, where I expect the ownership to be really minimal, but 7,000 is too cheap for him there. The matchup is great. You are risking that they run him right back out there for 34 minutes, but not out of play for me in that particular spot. Your boy Kelly Oubre against the Hawks on the outside of tournament viability at 6K. I wouldn't have any Elie Okobo. Again, I need an upside, and I need him to get the minutes, which I don't think he does in this matchup, and I need him to be productive, and that's enough risk for me where I just don't think I'm possibly going to get 35 out of Okobo tonight, so I wouldn't look there. And Rashawn Holmes, would still be very interesting with DeAndre Ayton playing questionable amounts of time, but at 5,000 something, I'll pass on Rashawn.
All right, last game of the night, the lone late game, the late night hammer, if you will. Philadelphia at Sacramento. Philly coming off a phenomenal win there in Golden State. We know that Redick and Wilson Chandler are out. We do know that Mike Muscala and Landry Shamet are starting. Amongst Muscala, Shamet, Connell, Bolden, and Brewer, who somehow Corey Brewer has not played for Sacramento yet. That'll be rectified before he retires. But what do you like amongst those value guys? Do you see any of them with the likelihood of hitting 20 fantasy points? I think is kind of our target number for them if you were ranking. Who do you think gets closest to that?
Yeah, I mean, if you told me that they were going to get 25, I would still have no interest in any of them for tournament. Just for reference. It's just not going to be good enough. Under almost no circumstances is that going to be up. If you don't think you can get 30, you shouldn't be going anywhere near them. So it ends up being site dependent a little bit again. My favorite two in a vacuum would probably be Landry Shamet and then Jonah Bolden. I like Bolden's steal block upside and some of the things he's been doing a little more than Muscala. But Shamet's the only one I really like at his price. It is a matchup where I think he can splash down enough threes to maybe get to 30. So 36 on FanDuel where you can drop it, sure. 33 on DK, I think that's really nice. I would probably rather go Jonah Bolden over Muscala when you have Embiid in there. If Muscala is starting at center and Embiid's not there, that'd be a different scenario for me. But with that going on, with the way things are now, I would actually rather have Jonah Bolden in a tournament. I'm not playing specious minutes. Corey Brewer, again, with all the big starters here, there's just a usage issue that I think people aren't taking into account. A lot of people talk to me about the 76ers today, and they're saying stuff like, yeah, about this game and this game. And the games they're always referring to is when they're missing either one or two of Simmons, Butler, and Embiid. With all those guys in there playing, these value guys, it's going to be a lot tougher for them to get what they need to get. So Butler at 7,300 on DraftKings, obviously, I think, most inclined to do a super smash number. But I probably like Embiid the most than Butler, than Simmons, were I to rank the three of them. But they do all have the super upside necessary to be, in consideration today. Butler a little more difficult on FanDuel. On FanDuel, I would rather play Luka. I would rather play Beal. I would rather play Booker. But DK 7,300, that does bring him well into play. So like this team a lot. Obviously a tremendous matchup and it's supposed to be a close game, close spread. So I like these guys a lot. And Embiid should just be a goddamn monster. Looking across the ball, De'Aaron Fox has been a little worried about the consistent issues just as far as slowing down with the production and the minutes a little bit. Healed, especially on FanDuel, I like. Fox fine to play in tournaments. Don't misunderstand me. And this is a 76ers team that is susceptible to his style of play. So that's fine. Shumpert I don't want to do on today because of the aforementioned conditions. Bielitsa I don't want to do because of the aforementioned conditions. Bogdan, again, would obviously rather play Healed on FanDuel, but on DK where you're saving, I think, $1,000 between the two, Bogdan in play for me. Bagley would be after most of those guys for me. I would rather play, even on DK where he's priced best, I would rather play Bogdanovich. I'd rather play Fox. I'd rather play Healed. I don't really want to play Willie Cauley-Stein. Minutes have already been under threat, and now you're dealing with Joel Embiid, who I expect to, A, not make life easy for him, and B, very possibly limit his playing time due to foul trouble. So probably, I mean, he's really cheap. He is a guy who can randomly put up 40-something. So I wouldn't outright disagree with Willie Cauley-Stein in a tournament, but not a guy I'm specifically targeting.
All right, there we are. Let's get to questions. We have 14 minutes. Of course, we're going to go with the premium Slack chat first, so let me get that one open. First question here. This is from Eric in Leesburg. Wink, wink, nod, nod. Do you prefer? It's me. Do you prefer DeAndre Ayton or Chris Middleton on DraftKings?
Chris Middleton.
Okay, thank you very much. Now let's get on to everybody else's questions. Let me get this open here. We'll scroll up to the top. Oh boy. A lot of notifications. Now this is crazy. It's been a while since I've been doing this one. Let's scroll down to see who has stuff from EMAC. We'll get down to the bottom here. Should have got that primed and ready. But reminder, if you have not yet signed up, use promo code Live Before Lock, all one word, to get 50% off at your first month of any month-long package at checkout on Osmo. That'll get you access to premium Slack. They're saying Clay plans to play. So that's fine. We've got DKGPP Thoughts Core. We have Gibbs going for the 8s and 4s. He likes that. We have Luka, Russell, Gobert, and Aldridge. Is that a solid core for him to build around?
Yes.
Okay. Please, this is for our friend Achilles. Please rank the following. Shamet. Oh, he qualifies it. Please rank the following trash. Shamet, George Hill, Frazier, Devin Harris. He plays cash mostly.
He may have it right. He's got it right. That's it. In that order.
Ariza or Oubre?
Oh, I think I have to go with Oubre and for the matchup. Yeah, I'll go with Kelly. Kelly, ooh.
See, Mo Bamba is out. Does that elevate Kem Birch at all for you?
Well, yes, it elevates Kem Birch for me. I don't know if it elevates him into the realm of playability. Yeah, I mean, that's still the most likely scenarios. You're getting like 16 minutes. So I don't think I'm going there. So, yes, it elevates Kem Birch. Not enough to play him.
All right. Let's see. Fox, Brewer, and Bryant. Pardon me. Fox and Bryant or Willie Cauley-Stein and Rubio on FanDuel.
Kobe? I will go with. I'd play Fox and Bryant in a tournament. I really don't want to play almost any of those 4 players in cash, but in a tournament, the former one there for me.
All right. Scrolling up. Could you please rank for FanDuel? Let's do cash first. This is for our friend 1.6. FanDuel, Rubio, Collison, White, and Satoransky.
In cash.
Cash, FanDuel. We're going to do tournaments next.
I'm going to just make guesses at the ownership rather than take 2 minutes on this. And say Satoransky, Rubio, White, Collison.
All right. And then in cash. Pardon me. And then in tournaments.
I'd probably invert it to Rubio, Satoransky, White, Collison. Just swap the top 2.
All right. Is Gordon out for blood on DraftKings? I do not like the volatility with Gordon. He disappoints
Which
far
one?
too often. Aaron Gordon. Aaron Gordon.
Yeah, I don't. I mean, like, I get the theory. Yeah, I don't think I want to. I wouldn't go that far. I'd rather play Aaron Gordon than Eric Gordon. If that's doing you any good. Yeah, he's cheap enough still. He'd be in for playing tournaments. I just really believe in Vooch, and that makes it dicey. And he's been consistently good. I just have no reason to expect it to change. And Terrence Ross has taken a lot of sort of that go time usage. So, but the upside is there. So I would not play Aaron Gordon, but I wouldn't object to someone who did, if that makes any sense whatsoever.
All right, shout out to GoDucks 1986. He's playing $5,300 head-to-heads tonight. Way to go, man!
Get it done.
Way to go. Good luck. Vaya con Dios. Are DeMar and LaMarcus Aldridge both playable on the same DK Cash team?
Yes. I find it. It does not strike me as likely that DeMar DeRozan is worth the play in cash due to his recent form and other things that are going on. But I don't consider the presence of Aldridge terribly relevant for a cash question. Because the most likely way that team scores is both those guys getting 40, Rudy getting 30, and then some 20s and 25 scrapped around for the rest of the team. And the matchup is positive enough that, it wouldn't really bother me if that's what I landed on in cash. Again, I don't think I'd end up with DeRozan, but...
It's always disconcerting when you're trying to load your crunch and it says, no, we can't load it. It's just an empty file. What?
That seems bad.
That seems a little risky.
To jump in the chat and do myself for a while.
Let me just give it one more run here. We still got a little time. I can always go with the backup plan. I've got a lineup there that's nothing but later games, so I can just put that in. Let's see here. Back to the chat. Fournier or a Ross?
Yeah, it's interesting. It would really depend on the ownership. I imagine there's no ownership for Fournier, and really not that much for Ross at his current price. I do think this is a matchup where it's more likely that the production does come through the bigs. But probably for the ownership, I would go with Fournier. It's a shit split for him. He hasn't been good against Brooklyn for a while. Not that that matters a lot with their rapidly changing personnel. But I will, I will go with Fournier still.
All right. Darius Miller, Hood, or Powell, DraftKings?
Powell.
Shamet or Brunson, both for cash and GPP, please.
I'll take Brunson in cash and Shamet in tournaments.
All right. We've got Shamet or George Hill. As we're coming down to the wire, we got 7 minutes left.
I would take Shamet in cash and tournaments.
Let's see. Oh, that's why it didn't load. All right. Well, we're fine with that. All right. Ayton or Okafor, DK tournaments?
Okafor. I don't hate the matchup. Again, these two teams played not that long ago with a similar situation, and Okafor had a monster. Now, I think he was 10 for 12 from the field in that game. Like, that was still a ceiling game, but he had 50-something. So I think he can get me the 40-something that I'm really needing at that price. So I would stick with Oak.
All right. Some would say he laid down a monster.
Some would.
All right. Now I'm down to the wire here. We've got Porter or Barnes Yahoo tournaments.
Barnes.
We've got favorite centers under 7,000 on FanDuel.
Under 7? Because
yes.
I want to say that's exactly what Ayton costs there. I lied. Yeah, no, 7. That's what it costs. So under 7, well, yes. It's dropping off quick. So it depends what you're at. Is this favorite as in how much I like them relative to their price?
Sure.
I will go with favorite would be. Sorry, I got to check it through. Alex Len Revenge. Muscala 38. All right, so I have no. I'm not going to rank them because it takes time. But in a tournament, I have no issue seeing Mike Muscala. No issue seeing Alex Len. No issue seeing Brook Lopez. No issue seeing Jared Allen, and no issue seeing Dwayne Dedman. Those would be the 5 guys who would constitute my favorites under 7K.
All right. Going back here. Thoughts on Darren Collison now that Kojo and Tyreek Evans are playing? Tyreek is coming off the bench for what that's worth.
Yeah, I have very little interest. I had very little interest with both those guys out. It's just it is not a good spot whatsoever. As you mentioned, it's been over under of 204 or whatever. Just I think you're being too cute if that's where you're going.
All right. We got 5 minutes left. Draymond or John Collins for a tournament? I would go Draymond.
If they were exactly the same price, I would play John Collins.
Okay.
But and so he's asking for FanDuel probably. I will go with John Collins there. And I like playing Draymond a lot. DK, it is like a $1,500 difference. So for what it's worth.
All right. I am now running my last crunch. Let's see what happens here.
Get it done.
And that's going to slow things down. Cash on FanDuel, Brunson or Shamet. This is for our pal Rinpack, who was playing some three-mans on DK. I saw you there, Rinpack.
That's my guy. I'll go with Brunson for the moment. I'd really like to get a lineup there, but I'll go with Brunson at present.
All right. What do you think the biggest mistake somebody is going to make tonight is, or the biggest pitfall?
Yeah, I've been doing that a lot recently. Yesterday, I literally spent a half hour shitting on the Knicks, and specifically Mario Hezonja. Literally at the end of the show there, what do you think about Mario Hezonja? And I went, no. I literally just said the word no 19 times, especially when the starting lineup came out. I thought he was like out of play. So who's the guy I think people are going to love today who isn't going to get there? I feel like I did this with someone.
Probably it's got to be Doncic or Harden. Or not Doncic, Jokic or Harden.
Yeah, I don't really mind Jokic or Harden. Like, I'm slightly disinclined towards them, but I don't think they're like donk plays. Like, there's been a play like 5 of the last 6 days where I was like, this guy's gonna be popular. People are dumb. Don't play that fucking guy. And those guys have been. One of them was okay, and the rest were terrible. So like, it's gone well. But yeah, I'm looking for the mistake. I don't know, but if you watched the whole show, I'm sure I intimated it at the time. I don't know. I'm gonna go look at our ownership and look at the top of that list and see if anyone jumps out to me. Don't do that.
D'Angelo Russell. Oh, not in enough lineups for me.
Yeah, I'm fine with D-Russ. You know that.
And finishing this off right here. There we go. I got 3 minutes. Can I upload that? Sorry, gamers. I got $100 on the line here. I shouldn't have done that tonight, but
just the boy.
But the last 2 days, Eddie, I've literally finished within $1 or on the mark of my entry fees. I have broken exactly even 2 days in a row on DraftKings.
We got 2 minutes. Let's ask some question. Pay up at both point guard or small forward spots. Someone is asking me. I'll assume that's FanDuel because of the construction. I'll assume they mean in tournaments because, well, that's what everyone likes to play. And as a generic answer, I would be more inclined to double pay up at small forward and play like Bron Giannis and punt like Brunson Shamet than to do the converse.
Shabazz Napier on FanDuel. This is for Don't Embiid My Status.
Fine. Not super thrilled. Has played a little bit over his head. Matchup actually not that brilliant, but fine. I just don't know if this kind of ceiling we need. Like, I think he's still like 53 or some number that makes it a little sticky for me, but fine. In play. Better than, DJ Augustine across the ball.
All right. Kenrich or Maxey on Yahoo tournaments?
Great question. I'll go with Maxey Kleber.
Russell or Booker? D'Angelo Russell or Booker FanDuel tournament. We got 90 seconds.
Booker.
Dedmon or Brook Lopez DK tournaments?
Brook Lopez.
Augustine and Vucevic or Curry and Brook Lopez?
Curry and Brook Lopez in tournaments. I can't play Augustine in a tournament. I just can't make myself do it.
Portis for DK Cash? Question mark.
No. A little late now. I guess it's DK, but no, certainly not inclined towards Portis in any cashy setting.
All right, and
there in a tournament, but not for cash.
This one will take us up to lock. Is Barton going to be a good play today for tournaments?
My guess will be no. It's just not gelling with him at the moment. Maybe it changes on the back-to-back. I don't have an issue with him in tournaments because he does carry the requisite upside. But no, I will. If you have me to guess yes or no, give me a pure binary. I will guess that he is not a good play for tournaments today.
All right, we are at lock by the time everybody sees this. That means we have the world's favorite game, Daddy Likey.
That's right.
I think we have 2 games that are locking, so we'll give everything a moment to refresh on the...
I want to say it's 3. Is it just 2? I thought there were 3 at 7. There's 3. The Washington, Charlotte, and Orlando games, I think.
You are correct. So there are 3 games. There's 2 at 7:30. I transposed that because I.
Yeah, full house 7s over 7:30s. Yeah, let me take a look and see if I can see what I see.
All right, I'm gonna call up our DK, refresh it here for our ownership projections here, and that's a reminder. See, I was answering all those questions until the very, very end when I did 2 from the Yahoo chat. You got to get your questions. You got to be behind the paywall here. Promo code live before lock gets you 50% off any 1-month package here at awesemo.com. Reminder, on the front page we have several free articles for the Super Bowl single game content. We also, behind the paywall, have ownership projections. That's going to be very, very key. We have player projections. We have the rankings from Awesemo himself on the YouTube channel. There's On the Contrary, where the Fast Eddie Fear of football, Evan Silva, joined Alex Baker, also known as
a hell of a compliment.
There you go. For both of you.
He actually said that once, so I will. Normally, I would say that's way out of bounds, but he actually gave me that compliment once, so I will take it reflectively from you as well.
I've hung out with Evan many times. Whenever I see him and you're not around, he's like, "Oh, hey, how's Eddie doing?" I'm like, "Really? You live closer to him than I do. You want to go fanboy out? You call him to come up to Chicago." All right, are we ready, good sir?
I'm ready. I'm looking on DraftKings here. Number 1 owned, Giannis Antetokounmpo, 25.4%. Daddy likes that. I mean, that's on a slate this big. That is a significant commitment. But really hard now to manage. Just the way I'm guessing this goes. And again, I am guessing how this goes because I'm fairly certain this is the first game Eric Bledsoe has rested this year, or missed for any purpose, not just rested. And he's not resting. It's his Achilles, I think, is sore. But regardless, I like that. At 10-9, that's the guy I want to spend up for at this point. Second most, Malcolm Brogdon, 22%. Yeah, 5,400 was, again, really nice points per dollar. I had him, projected for basically 30 fantasy points at the start of the day. That feels pretty good for 5,400. Wasn't that inclined at the start of the day because of the lack of upside. Taking Bledsoe out of there. Now we're adding potential a couple extra minutes, a couple more shots. Now it even makes sense there, so I'm fine with that. Middleton, 14%, I absolutely love. That's way too little. And then in some degrees a victim of the fact that Brogdon is a K cheaper and Giannis himself is underpriced. And on a slate this big, how many the hell bucks are you going to get in there? But 14% Middleton, I absolutely love. There's Aaron Gordon at 14%. So ended up being pretty popular. Amusingly enough, Aaron Gordon, 13.65%. Nikola Vucevic, 13.60%. So almost identical ownership for the 2 bigs on the Magic. I slightly prefer Vooch simply because I'm a little more suspect of Towns and Jokic than most, I think. I think Towns and Jokic, the most likely scenario is, I predict Jokic for around 55 and Towns for a hair under 50. So, at that point, I kind of like Vooch just as someone I think is a little safer on the floor and can maybe sneak ahead of both those guys for a little. So I kind of like Vooch. I would rather have the Vooch at 14 than the Aaron Gordon at 14 just because of the way that team has been playing recently. But neither of those numbers particularly problematic to me. Portis at 13% seems like a bit much to me. I've had a lot of Portis questions. I don't know, Emac, why all the Portis love today on such a big slate? I get asked about Bobby Portis a lot today. I like Bobby Portis as a fantasy player. He's not a very good basketball player, but he's very good.
Parker being out, I guess those 16 minutes mean something to people.
Yeah, I just don't think that necessarily flows anything to him. I think there's a real chance he just still plays backup 5, and I don't know. We'll see. But yeah, Bobby. Jabari being out for personal, that matters. D'Angelo Russell, 8.2%. I absolutely love. I think that's gorgeous. Bradley Beal, 6.4%. I like that too. Malik Monk, 6%. Seems a little too cute. Has been getting more time recently, but on a slate this big, I think you're asking a lot out of Malik Monk, especially with some of the other value that opened up. So I would take the under on that. There is Evan Fournier at 4%, who is ahead of Terrence Ross, by the way, which I presume is this pricing disparity. I don't recall their prices offhand. Both obviously, though, on 4% on Fournier, fine at that number. 3.8% on Satoransky, I'd like that a lot. I'd be a bigger fan of that than Fournier, for example. Jeff Green, 3%, sure. Lauri Markkanen, 3%. If you're going to play him at 3% is the number. And it's just looked good recently, much better in his rebounding. and is sort of taking the alpha role in the offense a little more often than not, but did not mind him or Levine tonight in a pretty sexy matchup. Terrence Ross, 3%. Brook Lopez, 2.7%. I like a lot. Shabazz Napier, 2.7%. Again, it's fine for me. I think he's playing a little over his head, and the upside's a little limited, but certainly not crazy. Joe Harris, 2.5%. Sure. Otto Porter Jr., 2.5%. 2.5% if you're going to do it. I don't mind. 2.5% on Isaac. 2.3% on Tony Snell. No. I know, like Wizards and everything, but no. Tony Snell is never the answer. Trevor Ariza at 2.3%. Okay. Jared Allen, 2.1%. Fine at that price. Batum, 2%. Marvin Williams, 1.8%. Okay. Biombo, 1.7%. No. George Hill, 1.7%. That's better. DJ Augustine, 1.7%. Zach LaVine, 1.4%. Okay. It certainly isn't priced that well and hasn't been 100%, but 1.4% in what I think is actually a really positive matchup. Kemba Walker, 1.3%. Boy, he fell out quick, didn't he? I like him at that number. I do think there are systemic issues there now. I do think the absence of Zeller has forced Batum to start taking a larger role, and just their ability to run the downhill screen environment they had been running is much more difficult, and Kemba's paying for it more than anyone else. But 1.3%, against that team feels pretty good to me. DJ Wilson, 1.2%. Wayne Selden, 1.1%. Again, I'm worried about the upside. Hernan Gomez, 1%. I'd rather play him than Biombo tonight. Lamb, 0.8%. Carroll, 0.75%. Rondé, 0.73%. Michael Kidd-Gilchrist, 0.72%. Tony Parker, 0.67%. Dunn, 5.6%. Kuruks, 5.2%. Thomas Bryant at 0.45%. Don't mind that again. Ed Davis, 0.42%. Rolo, 0.29%. Sam Decker, 0.26%. Sterling Brown, 0.23%. Shaquille Harrison, 0.22%. Boy, no one wanted to play themselves today.
I'm not hearing him play themselves.
Cam Birch, 0.18%. Pat Connaughton, 0.17%. How the hell do you pull? I mean, I guess you could go to Connaughton in this spot. Trevion Graham, 0.14%. Jordan McRae, 0.12%. Archie Diacono, 0.11%. Miles Bridges, 0.10%. Theo Pinson, 1.0%. Ersan Ilyasova, 0.07%. Mohamed Bamba, 0.05%. Congratulations. You ran me out of breath and played yourself.
All right. Here is an interesting mental exercise, Eddie. What do you think LeBron James' ownership is on FanDuel?
40 minutes last game was really weird. But we had enough advance. I would think very limited. I can't check now because it's locked exactly what all the small forward options were. So you got to give me a minute as I run through the 22 teams and who they had eligible at small forward. But my gut would be in the realm of 18 to 20%.
All right. Well, he's ruled out for rest. That news came out literally 1 minute after.
Well, and really, you guys?
Yeah.
Wow. They're not even on a back-to-back.
No, they're not. And they're on the ABC Saturday game, too.
Wow. And then it makes everyone else in the game worse.
Yep.
It makes all the Lakers, if you ran them, like, that's a great swap into some Lakers, kids.
For those of us on DraftKings, Ingram, Rondo, Kuzma, Zubac. What do you got? Those the four viable guys?
I mean, certainly the first is Zubac. I worry about starting up versus guys. I like Zubac a lot as a play. And he just carry a very big upside for a 5K price tag. So certainly would not be out of play for me whatsoever. But yeah, all those guys get really interesting on DK now. What time's that game? 8:30?
8:30.
Yeah. So I'd increase exposure to slate starting at 7:30 or 8 that include that game, because you're going to have like
Yahoo will be that. Yeah.
Yeah, like some people, there will be some ownership sucked up by. It's a beating for people playing on FanDuel. What a kick in the nuts. Sorry. So he was out for 3 and whatever weeks with a groin injury, which is something that's obviously. And don't get me wrong, he took his time with that injury, as he should. And then comes back and I think he played 40 minutes last game, and then has a day off, and then post-lock announced out for rest.
He really could be sore or could not. I mean, I would think he would want to play in this one.
Don't call it rest then. Yeah. But yeah, it's if you don't play basketball for 3 weeks and then go out there and play 40 minutes of going, I was going to say 100%, but he wasn't. But going 90%, you're like, I'm I'm well older than LeBron, but with all my injuries and shit, when my backs and my knees, my ankles and everything's in shape, I get out to play basketball now once or twice a month, and the next day I can't freaking move. So yeah, I'm not surprised if he was feeling a little peaked, a little fatigued, a little tired after a prolonged squawk. But yeah, that's a nice kick in the nuts for people on FanDuel.
Yeah.
Sorry about that. Although I am happy to say that at the beginning of the day, where I had him like even with Giannis based on their prices, when Bledsoe went out, I said I now prefer Giannis. So hopefully I moved some people, because that sucks.
Yeah, we'll see. Last question before we get on out here. Rinpack from Premium Chat would like to know: would you turn Luka into one of the Lakers in tournaments? I can't get there myself.
I would really rather turn someone else into one of the Lakers. Yeah. Like, I'd rather turn Jimmy Butler into one of the Lakers. I would rather do something else. So that is a very vague question, because there's obviously a double split, because they're not all priced the same, and you're saving $1,600 to $2,000 once you make that swap and you're doing something else. So it's difficult to answer that question in the abstract. But I like getting some exposure to those Lakers now, which should be well too low of an ownership. And with some overlay on the late slates. Like, I'd be more inclined, if I were you, to play late slates and to emphasize those other Lakers who are in a pretty good spot now.
Yep. So your mileage may vary on that one. That's the one game that DraftKings did not put. They didn't do the 8:30 games. They got a 7:30 slate. They got a 9 o'clock slate. They got the single games at 10 o'clock. They have two showdowns for both the 8:30 games. So
there is a showdown for that game?
Yeah, there is. Let me look at FanDuel just real quick here. Normally
Yes, Contavious Caldwell-Pope is fine on a 2 or less game slated 4.4K. Absolutely at this point. How does this affect the Warriors? With all the Warriors in and with LeBron out, this is now much less likely a game that the Warriors are going to keep necessarily competitive. So it isn't particularly good news for anyone. I would consider it a downgrade for all the starting players on that team, because their odds of a blowout went from, 16 to 37%.
Yeah. So the FanDuel is running a 2-gamer for this. They don't have large prize pools. So you're not going to get stars in your eyes, but you play, let me just put it, one props to FanDuel. You play those 100 man or whatever they are, 110 man, 3 max. I usually put 1 in there when I'm playing over there. It's $25 to first. You get a 1% lineup.
Are amazing too. One of the few ways where there's still really a significant advantage is playing late slates on FanDuel and joining contests at 729 and 759 and joining satellites that are 9 out of 29 filled. Yeah. You can just accrue massive, massive numbers of tickets.
Yeah, because the other thing FanDuel does, they only put their quote main slate. So right now, everything for basketball. Wait for it. Oh, God, that can't be right. Everything from basketball is now filtered for the Sunday slate. They have a 7:30 Express, an 8:30 Express, and a 9 o'clock after hours. But their default filter is for Sunday at 1 o'clock.
Which really accurate. I've noticed. I didn't know what you meant for a second, but yeah, I've noticed the same thing. It's like, if you're going to,
it's beautiful. That's how they get the overlay there.
Yeah, but it's like, if you're, and the main things don't overlay, but there's just a lot of people who don't play satellites, which is fine. Satellites are not, by any means a must part of your retinue as a DFS player. But they really do that. So yeah, if they have the little toggle, I know what you're talking about now, on the left side in their lobby, as soon as 7 o'clock kick goes to whatever the fuck time is tomorrow, which is hilarious, by the way, because it's especially funny today. Because tomorrow's the day everyone's really wanting to play basketball on the split 3-game slate with the Super Bowl going on. Yeah, that's definitely gonna be a popular. So yeah, but those satellites are they were. I know several people who, I won't go with make their living, but do extremely well by really taking big pieces of those. So.
Yeah, Tyson Chandler is out, so that's just going to boost JaVale and Zubac. So
yeah, now I legit like those guys. I probably like JaVale a little bit more, but the way they're
revenge, Eddie. He's familiar with the shooting background of Arena.
I forgot about revenge.
We went the whole show. We had to throw out a narrative one time. All right, with that, we're going to get on out of here, because Eddie and I have been on air damn near 2 hours. We have been talking to each other for 2 hours because we were trying to get things sorted.
Mr. Musk.
Oh, it's crazy. That's crazy. All right, well, I'm gonna go have some nice leftover Chinese takeout that I had for
No need.
lunch. That's gonna be dinner. So good times there. Gonna watch the Wizards and enjoy. But remember, in the can we have On the Contrary. That's breaking down the NFL game that is an hour and 15 minutes of Evan Silva, Alex Baker, you know him as Osmo, and Chris Baggs going incredibly in depth and giving you some strategies on how to construct your lineups with a narrative to get you, you know, Patriots way ahead, Rams way ahead, this happens, that happens, who you should correlate with your captain spot, etc. So
that's right. See, I'm a dinosaur. I don't remember there's like single Super Bowl DFS, isn't there?
Yes.
Sorry.
Last year we did get to play IDPs, the individual defensive players, because it was the first time they did it. This year they kept it like the rest of them. Yeah. We killed it at FanVice because I just messaged our buddy Hot Magic, Andrew Barron, about this, and I said, "Didn't we play IDP last year?" And he goes, "Yeah, don't you remember? You made me write an article about it." And then he goes, "And then I got second in the 150 or the 180." He goes, "Thanks again for making me do work."
That's great.
All right. On that note, gamers, good luck.